Hey NBA 2K fans, in this video we're going to talk about cap holds, what they are and kind of how they work in NBA 2K in your My Leagues and My GMs. If you're new to the channel, I'm Coach 2K. While you're here, subscribe, click the bell to get notified of anything new so you don't miss a single NBA 2K video I put out. And while you're here, also check out my League series. I got a couple of them. I'll put a link in the left hand corner to my fictional My League so you can see me kind of going through the process and some gameplay of an actual My League as these things kind of come up. But I wanted to talk about cap holds. Let's get started doing that. Alright, so let's start by talking about what a cap hold is and how it works in NBA 2K. Now after the finals are over, you enter into the off season, and if you go into the cap hold section of the front office, then you're going to see a list of players on a screen that looks like this. So you can see here I have all these players listed, and what these are all free agents on my team who I may or may not re-sign for the upcoming season. We haven't figured that out yet. And you'll also notice that there's a dollar amount here that says cap hold for each of the players that are on the list. So the first thing a cap hold is it's kind of like a placeholder that says, okay, you might re-sign this player and the salary might be around this range here. So we're going to kind of hold this amount of money in cap space spending so that you can't spend it on another player. Now, one thing you want to know is that a cap hold is not a contract. So Bogdanovich can still sign a contract with us. He can sign a contract with any other team in the league. But one advantage we have is that if we want to sign Bogdanovich to a contract, we can go over the salary cap to do it because of the salary cap exceptions. Keep in mind that if we want to sign a free agent who's a player that's not on our roster, we can't go over the cap to sign that player. Now keep in mind that the NBA has a soft salary cap, which means there are certain situations that you can go over the cap, and one of those is to re-sign a free agent on your own team because they have bird rights. So the top three here are the exceptions to the cap: bird rights exception, early bird, and non-bird exceptions allow you to go over the cap to re-sign your own player to a contract, which is an advantage over a player who's not on your roster when that happens. Another reminder too, I did a whole salary cap 101 video, and I'll put a link to that in the left hand corner if you want to check that out. I gotta go through exactly how the salary cap, luxury tax threshold, and the exceptions in general work. Now if we want to sign a player who is a free agent who's not on our team, we can't use an exception to the cap to go over the cap to sign that player. So that means if we want to sign a player like JJ Redick here and we go in to negotiate his contract and we want to give him a $27 million contract, which is $13 million in year one and 13 and some change in year two. In that first year, that $13 million, that means we'd have to have $13 million worth of cap space in order to do that. So if the cap was $100 million and we were already spending $100 million, we couldn't sign JJ Redick to a contract. However, we could sign Darren Collison and Bogdanovich to a contract because in those cases we have the salary cap exception to do it. Alright, so let's look at this in another way. Let's say that we had a $100 million salary cap and we had already committed $85 million in salary to other players. Well, if we wanted to sign Darren Collison, we could do that. Let's say he only wanted $12 million and that's what we signed him to. We'd still be under the cap. We'd still have $3 million. But then if we went over and we tried to sign JJ Redick, who wanted $13 million, well, we couldn't do that because it would put us over the cap. So we would be limited, and so we'd only be able to sign Collison in that case. However, if we had a $100 million salary cap and we'd already committed $85 million in salary to other players on our roster and there was no cap hold, then we could go sign JJ Redick to his $13 million contract, sign JJ Redick, and then once we've got him signed and under contract, Well then, because of the salary cap exception that allows us to go over the cap to re-sign our own free agents because of the bird rights, well then we could sign Collison too. And so it would allow us to go over the cap way more than we normally would. Now, because you have to put a cap hold on a player that you might re-sign, like here it puts a cap hold of $12 million on Collison. So taking the same example, $100 million salary cap, let's say I've already committed $85 million to other players on my roster, but we don't know what we're going to do with Collison yet. What they do is they make you have a cap hold of whatever amount. So in this case, it's $12 million. So that means basically until I re-sign Collison, it's like I've committed $97 million in salary, and that would prevent me from signing JJ Redick unless I decided to just get rid of Collison. So the purpose of the cap hold is to prevent you from using your unused cap space on free agents outside your team first, so that you can manipulate the salary cap exception to sign players for more money than you normally would. Now, just like everything in the NBA, the amount of the cap hold is already determined based on the contract, number of bird years, and those kinds of factors. Now, in the game, it looks like to me that the cap hold that's placed on your salary cap is anywhere between 120 and 150% of their last year's contract. And that was just on my limited testing. So just keep in mind that the cap hold, you don't have to calculate it. It's already calculated for you. And that may or may not be the actual contract amount you'd end up negotiating with that particular player. It's just already a predetermined hold amount that prevents you from going and signing free agents first with that unused cap space, and then coming back and being able to go over the cap to sign your own free agents. So what you have to do in the off season is you have to decide which players you think you want to keep and which ones you don't want to keep. And then you either decide to renounce their rights or basically secure their rights by putting a cap hold on their salary. So you can do that in the cap hold section in the front office if you want before the off seasons. After the off season starts, but before the free agent moratorium, you can go in here and you can do it in here. This is one place you can do it, but you can also do it inside the moratorium period. Now, you're probably most used to seeing it inside the free agent moratorium, when you're going through the actual process of free agency. Like this is the end of day 2 inside the free agent moratorium screens. And you can see here, this is a list of all my free agents again. And this time there's a status of either renounce rights or cap hold. So again, cap hold means this is a player that I want to retain my bird rights for. And renounce rights means that I don't want to retain the rights to that player. And if I renounce his rights, then that frees up that cap space, like in the case of Darren Collison. If I renounce the rights to Darren Collison, and that would free me up maybe to go sign JJ Redick, and then I could sign JJ Redick, and if I wanted to come back later and sign Collison, I still might be able to do it if no other team wanted him, but I wouldn't be able to use the bird rights as an exception to the cap. Now, just another place you can see the cap holds, you can go into your salary cap table and scroll down and see your cap holds there. I've been known to actually get a piece of paper and kind of make my own salary cap table that I can see a little bit better and kind of do some math and figure out, well, how much space do I have? What am I working with here? And what can I do in terms of my bird rights and re-signing my own players when I'm trying to figure out what to do? The other thing about cap holds is that the cap holds amount, like in the case of Collison, was like $12 million. But that doesn't mean that's the final contract amount. So you can negotiate a contract with that player that might be more or less than what the cap hold amount was. So just keep in mind the cap hold is just a set amount that's put on as a placeholder to prevent you from using that space on a free agent that's not on your team in attempt to kind of use the salary cap exceptions to allow you to go over the cap more than you should be able to. Okay, so just to summarize, a cap hold is a amount of money that is counted against your salary cap for your own free agents. So you won't use that money to sign other free agents and then use your salary cap exception in order to re-sign your own players and in essence give you the ability to go way over the cap more than you should. So just make sure that when you're going through the off season that you put a cap hold on the right people and renounce the rights to the ones that you don't want. And if you need to free up cap space, you got to renounce the rights of some of those players. And I even suggest kind of making a sheet on paper to kind of go through and see where your salary cap situation is so you know what you're working with when you do that. Okay, so that's kind of a basic explanation of what cap holds are and why they are there. In the NBA, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but just realize that it's there to kind of prevent you from, going over the cap more than you should be able to by kind of taking into account your own free agents and their effect on the cap if you're going to re-sign them. So if you got any questions, put them down in the comments. I'll try my best to answer them for you. While you're here, check out my other videos, including my My League series. I'll put a link to my career in My League up in the corner there if you want to take a look at that. In the meantime, I'm Coach 2K. I'll see you on the court in the next video. Thanks for watching.